Just because band members play in perfect harmony doesn't mean they're on the same page backstage. These ex-bandmates had some wild things to say about their former friends.
A shy guitarist with rock goddess talent, or a damaged girl with beef against her bandmates? Joan Jett may be the Runaways' iconic, mysterious frontwoman, but her bandmates have a lot to spill. In her book, a memoir of the Runaways, Cherie Currie told the story of being approached in a club and recruited to audition for a band that was being put together by someone who made her feel like maybe it was a setup of some sort. When she saw Joan Jett at the audition that she felt vastly unprepared for, she wrote that Jett already seemed like a seasoned professional, even as a teenager, writing, "It was weird because back at the club, there had been something so shy and withdrawn about her. But man, when she put that guitar around her neck, you couldn't take your eyes off her. She oozed attitude and charisma. I was very, very intimidated by her and totally drawn to her at the same time." Currie spoke of their first interactions as though Jett had already climbed a few rungs up the ladder of fame. She was well known enough that Currie remembered being starstruck and predicted that she'd go a long way in the business, but there was something down to earth about her too. Currie recalled shaking her hand for the first time, adding, "She seemed friendly enough, and her presence relaxed me a little." That intuition proved right on the money. It was at that first audition that Jett and manager Kim Fowley stepped away for a bit and wrote the song that would become one of the Runaways' biggest hits, Cherry Bomb. It's tempting to think of songwriters and rock stars as being larger than life and as always having the confidence to put their own thoughts on paper. That might not always be the case though. In 2013, Joan Jett sat down to talk to WNYC Studios. She said that over the little 3 years that the Runaways were together, they were considered, quote, "one of the most magical times in my life." She spoke too about getting started in music and her early career as a songwriter, saying it was easier back then.
Well, we just read about things that happened to ourselves or happened to our friends.
Easier perhaps, but according to Cherie Currie's observations in her memoir, Neon Angel, Jett wasn't always a confident songwriter. Even as manager Kim Fowley hurled bizarrely creative verbal abuse at the girls on a regular basis, he helped write lyrics. The then 15-year-old Currie was observant enough to know that he only wanted a piece of the royalties though, and he got it. Currie wrote the reason he got what he wanted was because Jett felt she couldn't do it on her own. Writing, "Looking back, it was obvious that Joan didn't need Kim to help her write, but she was as young and insecure as the rest of us, and Kim really made us all feel that we needed him." In 2000, the Runaways Sandy West and Cherie Currie sat down for an interview with Backfire, and it was, to be short, an enlightening experience. Although the band was wildly popular, they also burned bright and self-destructed in a fairly short time frame. By the time of the interview, rumors of a reunion had been brewing for some time, and it was Lita Ford who had vocally condemned Joan Jett for her apparent unwillingness to put the band back together. West and Currie, however, had different takes on things.
I was always really afraid of Lita.
Yeah.
I was.
Lita Ford?
Yeah. But she was really tough.
They claimed that Ford had set the reunion up to be a failure. Ford arranged to call Jett to work out the logistics of a potential $1 million record deal immediately after Jett would be getting off an unimaginably long international flight. When an exhausted Jett wasn't feeling the conversation, Ford threw a fit, and Currie said the whole thing fell through. She continued, explaining that it fell through after that too, with Ford being the one to refuse behind the scenes, explaining to Backfire, "Lita's been lying to people, blaming everything on Joan. Joan's never been the bad guy in this. She's always been the supportive one. There's something wrong with Lita. She's unstable." By the time 2018 rolled around, it hadn't gone unnoticed that a 40th anniversary for the Runaways was fast approaching. What better time would there be to bury the hatchet? Unfortunately for fans, Lita Ford made it quite clear that wasn't going to happen. The reason? To Ford, it was simple. The reason, as she told the Daily Mail, was Joan Jett. Ford was at an event in Las Vegas when she was asked about the potential reunion, and her response didn't leave much room for interpretation. As she said, "Joan Jett is very much in Joan Jett land, I guess you could say. Will she ever come out of Joan Jett land? I don't think so. I think her manager controls that, and it's really up to him and her." She wasn't finished either, and claimed that Jett had become so beholden to her longtime manager that he had even joined them at dinner, and that his interference led to her denying the possibility of a reunion. She did hint, though, at the fact that in order for there to be a reunion at all, there were a lot of behind-the-scenes conflicts that would need to be put aside. Still, did she see Jett and her fellow pioneering bandmates as family, despite the conflict? Maybe her answer to the Daily Mail will explain things, as she admitted. "No, we don't feel that way about each other at all. I don't feel that way about the rest of the girls. we're just better off living our separate lives. Lita Ford's memoir, Living Like a Runaway, doesn't back down from the perhaps inevitable conflict that happened as being part of the Runaways. Think about it. When a group of teenage girls are plucked from obscurity, put on stage, and have a meteoric rise through what was still a male-dominated industry, it has to be rough.
When we first started, a bunch of girls, Joan Jett was in the Runaways. It was pretty nuts, you know.
Although it's clear that she's never been on the best of terms with Joan Jett, she wrote candidly about a terrifying night when she discovered even if they weren't friends, they still had each other's backs. The Runaways were on tour in Japan, and Ford wrote that it was their final show when she tripped and fell down a flight of stairs. Afterward, she hooked up with a man from Texas who gave her some pills, and when she woke up, she discovered she was hemorrhaging blood. Jett and Cherie Currie went to her room and left when they felt like there was nothing else to be done. The bleeding didn't stop though, and Ford was rushed to the hospital. She said that she never really found out what had happened, but recalled waking up in the hospital. She wrote of the experience saying, "I saw Joan asleep in a chair next to my bed. It was weird because Joan and I never really hung out together, but the instant I saw her sitting at my bedside table in the hospital, I felt a tremendous respect for her. The Runaways were never a team, but that said a lot to me." It was 2004 that saw the release of Edge Play, a film about the Runaways. The documentary featured interviews with members of the Runaways, sans Joan Jett. And here's the weird thing, although it was written and directed by Victory Tischler Blue, better known as the Runaways' bassist Vicky Blue, there was no music from the actual band in the documentary. Why? Jett had refused to sign off on the rights to it. Tischler Blue sat down to talk to Ultimate Guitar about the release of the documentary and the challenges that came with filming it. She shared that she had already put together the film that she wanted, piecing together clips of live performances and behind-the-scenes footage to create something that, as she described, was all about the spirit of the band, the spirit of 5 teenage girls realizing their dream. When Jett refused to get on board, Tischler Blue had to start from scratch. Tischler Blue reminisced about the experience, saying, "It has been really weird and perplexing to everybody. At the same time, she made it clear that she wasn't sure what had happened and was baffled by the fact that Jett had gotten on board with another film that had considerable overlap with hers. That said, Tischler Blue said that there was one thing that she absolutely felt comfortable saying on Jett's behalf, and that was a statement regarding the death of drummer Sandy West, adding, "Sandy's heart was pure. She just wanted to play music, and that was it really." Jackie Fox was 15 years old when she met Kim Fowley and was recruited to become a member of the Runaways. That was in 1975, and it took her 40 years to tell a terrible story to the Huffington Post.
The environment that we were in was obviously not a healthy one for young girls.
It was New Year's Eve. They just finished a concert, and they kicked off a celebration at a local hotel with a group of teenagers. After being given pills, Fox says she went to lie down. She said that she stated drifting in and out of consciousness, and that's when she said Fowley raped her in front of the room. Fox recounted the experience, saying, "I remember opening my eyes. Kim Fowley was raping me, and there were people watching me. Among them," she claimed, were Joan Jett and Cherie Currie. Currie said that she had left the room at that point, but 14-year-old Carrie Crum, who also said she too had been sexually assaulted by Fowley, claimed she had seen Currie and Jett laughing as it happened. Jett posted a response on Facebook, saying in part, "I was not aware of this incident." Obviously, Jackie's story is extremely upsetting, and although we haven't spoken in decades, I wish her peace and healing. Fox's Facebook post came shortly afterward, saying in part, "I only wish that if my bandmates can't remember what happened that night, or if they just remember it differently, they would stick to simply saying that." Ricky Byrd played alongside Joan Jett with the Blackhearts for a decade, starting in 1981. He played with scores of others as well, and told Music Radar that the only unfortunate thing about his time with the Blackhearts was that Joan Jett overshadowed everyone else, even though she didn't mean to. Byrd said that she was super open to the rest of the band's suggestions, and even though the media invariably put the spotlight on her, he said that she never acted like she was the one in charge, or that hers was the only opinion that mattered though. He stressed that there were no hard feelings leading to his departure, and that she hadn't held it against him, adding, "I did bump into her 2 years ago. We hugged. He had gotten his own publishing deal, and he'd played the same songs often enough. It wasn't all fun and games though, and he told Guitar Player that he just couldn't keep up with the grueling pace she set. Between touring and recording, he'd had enough, but not in a bad way. For him, it's a memorable experience whenever he hears himself playing guitar on the most iconic version of I Love Rock and Roll," adding, "I walk into a store and I hear that song. It's like, how blessed am I? It doesn't get cooler than that." Given the young age that Joan Jett was when she got her start on stage, it's fitting that one of the first members of the Blackhearts was just 15 years old when he started playing alongside her in her new band. That was Gary Moss, who changed his name to Gary Ryan for his time on stage. He told the Pocono Record that he called it quits in 1986, after 7 years with the group. Why? The traveling and the touring just got to be too much, so he ended up opting for the quiet life, getting married and becoming a teacher. Despite his time off music, he never forgot how to play. So when he was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with Jett, he was ready and waiting. Moss had stayed in touch with Jett in the decades since leaving the band and told the Digital Journal that he had nothing but good memories and good things to say about her, adding, "Joan and I were very close and got along very well. Those first few years were hard work. Don't get me wrong. We were living and playing on the road relentlessly, just being a band. It still never really felt like work to me. But what was it like to play with Joan? It was awesome." AC Slade joined Joan Jett in the Blackhearts later in the game, and in 2015, he stepped away from the band to go solo. Surprising? Yes and no. In an interview for Icon vs. Icon, Slade credited Jett with handing him the most impactful experience of his career. He also acknowledged that it was a pretty sweet gig, and that it was nice just being able to show up and play, as the experience opened a ton of doors for him. While he was grateful for that, there was also no denying the fact that Jett was a force to be reckoned with. He talked to Joe Daly about his decision to leave the Blackhearts and said that while he didn't have anything bad to say about her, he also acknowledged the fact that the group was a deeply personal thing for her. That meant that while there were some outside influences, it was her group at the end of the day. He explained it, saying, "I didn't take it personally, as far as her not wanting to use songs he wrote, because I can understand that. The band's called Joan Jett. I joined Joan Jett in the Blackhearts. When he announced that he was going to release his own work and found there was a demand for it, he simply decided that while it was great to be a part of her thing, he needed to do his thing."
Dave Grohl has played with everyone from Jack Black to John Paul Jones of Led Zeppelin, but only one person considered replacing him. Chris Novoselic founded Nirvana with Kurt Cobain in 1987. Dave Grohl only joined the band 3 years later in 1990, with the 1991 hit album Nevermind being his debut.
There's something about being in a three-piece. It's a band stripped down to pretty much its basic elements.
In an interview with Uncut, Novoselic described just how instant Grohl's connection with the rest of the band was. It flowed, it sounded good, it was immediate, it just fell into place. There was no awkwardness. Dave is such a good musician, he rose to the occasion, or we rose to him, whichever way it happened. After Cobain's untimely death in 1994, Grohl didn't feel like Nirvana could continue. Grohl eventually formed the Foo Fighters, and he considered bringing Novoselic as a bass player. But as he told Rolling Stone back in 1995, it wouldn't have quite been a great experience for the rest of the band. Not officially being a part of the Foo Fighters hasn't kept the two from continuing to collaborate. During his CBGB Festival keynote speech in 2012, Novoselic sang Grohl's praises, saying it's always fun for them to work together and that Grohl has earned every success and accomplishment. Pat Smear was the only Nirvana member to go on to join Dave Grohl in the Foo Fighters, and as Far Out reports, it was a pretty bumpy ride. But as he told Rolling Stone in 2021, Smear is back with the band now, and he has a lot of admiration for Grohl. Smear revealed to the outlet, "Dave is a life lover, and I love that, because in the band I was in before with Dave, we did not have a life lover." According to Smear, playing with Grohl fills you with a love of life and good energy that simply did not exist in Nirvana. Smear told Rolling Stone, "Every night when he sings the line, 'I never want to die,' I look at him every time and think of Kurt. Every single time. Because Kurt was, 'I hate myself and I want to die.' And that's the oppositeness of them. And I do love being with life lovers." Back in 1995, Dave Grohl played drums on former Minutemen bassist Mike Watt's debut solo album, Ball Hog or Tugboat. In fact, there was an impressive lineup of artists that Watt and Grohl teamed up with for that album. Pearl Jam's Eddie Vedder, Red Hot Chili Peppers' Flea, Thurston Moore of Sonic Youth, and even Grohl's ex-bandmate Chris Novoselic. This large group was as eclectic as they were powerful, and they followed Watt's album with a tour that was just as creative. As Watt recalled in an interview with The Observer, Grohl could play a mean surf guitar. But it wasn't Grohl's surf guitar that left the biggest mark on Watt. It was, perhaps unsurprisingly, his drum playing. Watt told Rolling Stone in 2011, "One of the most blow-away players. I know he doesn't like to play drums much nowadays, but man, he was something else." When NME showed Queens of the Stone Age frontman Josh Homme a picture of Dave Grohl, Homme said, "That's my brother from another mother." Homme and Grohl have been good friends for quite some time. As Music Radar reports, the two were already old friends back in 2002, when Homme called Grohl asking him to play drums on Queens of the Stone Age's album Songs for the Deaf. At the time, Grohl was going through some turmoil with the Foo Fighters and was eager to take a break and play with Homme instead. The result was an exceptional one. To this day, Songs for the Deaf is praised for its unique sound and raw, heavy drumming. In 2009, Homme and Grohl got together again, forming heavy rock supergroup Them Crooked Vultures together with Led Zeppelin bassist John Paul Jones. Homme told Westward how playing with Grohl felt. It almost felt like a lot of dumb smiling because everyone was really excited to see what would happen. It's unclear just how far back their friendship goes, but it goes both ways. As Grohl told NME, "When Josh Homme and I play, it's like a conversation between two old friends that have had too much to drink." Apparently, hysterical laughing was the norm during Songs for the Deaf. When actor and musician Jack Black discovered Nirvana, he was blown away. Black confessed to heavy consequence. Nirvana simultaneously created a genre and destroyed a genre with one powerful album. Of course, Dave Grohl played the drums on the album and on the 1991 San Francisco show that Black attended. Black's first impression about Grohl lasts to this day. Black told Heavy Consequence, "There's no question, he's the best drummer alive right now. The thunder that came out of his kit was second to none." Then, in a pretty funny twist, it was Grohl who became a fan of Black's comedic metal group Tenacious D. In the early 1990s, Black remembers Grohl going backstage before Tenacious D's Viper Room gig and telling the band he was eager to see them play. When Tenacious D were preparing their first album, Black didn't really consider phoning Grohl simply because he thought he was too big a legend to play with them. Eventually, Black's producers convinced him, and Grohl ended up playing drums on all of Tenacious D's albums. He even starred as the devil on their tribute video. When Taylor Hawkins joined the Foo Fighters as their drummer, he did so half-heartedly. Dave Grohl was already a legendary drummer. How was he going to compete with that? Hawkins spoke to Rolling Stone in 2021 and recalled just how difficult his first years with the band were. When he saw Grohl play live with Queens of the Stone Age during their 2002 Songs for the Deaf tour, Hawkins thought, "There's the best drummer in the world again, and I'm the little dumb behind him that just does whatever I'm told and tries to play Everlong as good as him, and I can't." Of course, this wasn't what his other bandmates, including Grohl, thought of him. Grohl proved to be a great friend and mentor to Hawkins. When Hawkins had a breakdown and told Grohl he didn't think he could keep up with the pressure, Grohl gave him all the support he needed until he gained confidence again. Hawkins told Rolling Stone, "I did half the drums on it because he held my hand through it, like an older brother, best friend does. That's why we're here today." On November 23, 1991, Kurt Cobain spoke to Studio Brussels on the same day as their show in Ghent, which promoted their fresh Nevermind album. During the interview, Cobain was asked about the band's lineup, and he discussed having numerous fleeting drummers until hiring Dave Grohl in 1990. That's when things changed for Cobain. Cobain told the outlet, "This is the first time we've ever felt like a very definite unit. The band is finally complete because all the other drummers we had pretty much sucked." Cobain also described himself, Grohl, and Chris Novoselic as music lovers. He told Studio Brussels that although he was the main songwriter in Nirvana, making their songs was a collective process. As the three of them played together, new ideas emerged and the songs took their final shape. Cobain spoke about his friendship with Grohl and Novoselic as being more valuable than their creative collaboration, telling Studio Brussels, "Sometimes that's the most appreciative time we have with music. It's just being together because we're good friends and we play music. Sometimes we just get drunk, we want to have fun." When Dave Grohl played with Them Crooked Vultures back in 2009, he played alongside Josh Homme of Queens of the Stone Age and legendary bass player John Paul Jones of Led Zeppelin.
I thought, well, this could be a great opportunity to, actually jam with John Paul Jones.
Just like Homme, Jones is known for his experimental, at times heavy metal sounds. But his rock star status doesn't mean he wasn't himself inspired by Grohl. In a clip from the Godlike Genius NME Awards in 2011, Jones said, "I first became aware of Dave in Nirvana. The thing I noticed is that there was this maniac at the back, just thrashing from whatever his life was worth at the time. It was a hell of a noise, and he seemed to drive the whole band." In the same clip, Jones spoke about the experience of playing with Grohl. Playing live on stage is very, very exciting. I mean, he's bloody loud, but he's really good fun. Perhaps it's his very loudness or passion and energy that makes Grohl such a fun bandmate. Back in 2009, apart from forming the supergroup Them Crooked Vultures, releasing an album and touring with them, Dave Grohl also played the drums for the Prodigy song Run with the Wolves for the Invaders Must Die album. But according to the Prodigy co-founder Liam Howlett, it's Run with the Wolves that hits the mark the most thanks to Grohl's aggressive drumming. Howlett told Kerrang! Dave emailed us to see what we were up to and offered his services. It was really inspiring. It's definitely the most venomous track on the album. It's wicked. Howlett also spoke to BBC Radio 1 to explain that it really was thanks to Grohl that the track was even written in the first place. Dave Grohl sent me some drums on a hard drive with the hope that it might inspire me to write a song. Sure enough, when I got the hard drive, it was really inspirational. Within the first 10 seconds of it being on, I was like, yeah, this is a song. Howlett went on to say that Invaders Must Die was, in his opinion, the best Prodigy album at the time, all with a little help from Grohl. As Rolling Stone reports, Juliette Lewis, the lead singer of Juliet and the Licks, describes Dave Grohl both as a great guy and a godlike rock star. The two collaborated in 2006 when Grohl played the drums on Juliet and the Licks' album Four on the Floor. Lewis told Rolling Stone about the time she met Grohl a few years before. Dave was just really supportive of us, and I felt I could talk to him about anything. But when they actually played together, she was in awe. Lewis told Rolling Stone, "To be next to that kind of powerhouse of a player, I always joke like it was being next to Zeus." Then in 2011, Lewis spoke at the Godlike Genius NME Awards, recommending Grohl for the award. Lewis had this to say about Grohl: "Just to be 6 feet from him while he's playing is goosebumps. I think your Godlike Genius Award is very fitting because that's what I felt. I felt like I was in the heavens with Zeus, the god of gods, playing drums." By now, it's clear that Dave Grohl is a revered musician and a pleasure to be around. For most. But if there's one musician who considered replacing him, it was Kurt Cobain himself, toward the end of Nirvana in 1993.
That famous joke, like, what's the last thing the drummer said before he got kicked out? "I got a song I think we should play."
In a 2021 interview with Vulture, Grohl recalled a time when he heard Cobain rant about finding another drummer to replace him. Grohl told the outlet, "I could hear Kurt saying, I think we need a drummer that's more rudimental, along the lines of Dan Peters, who was the guy they almost hired when I joined the band." Understandably, Grohl was upset, thinking Nirvana was a solid threesome. He notes in an interview with The Big Issue that there was dysfunction in the band. Apparently in 1992, a year before Grohl overheard Cobain's comments, the Nirvana drummer had received a letter from Cobain in which the frontman told Grohl he loved him like a brother, according to Psychobabble. In the same letter, Cobain said he was looking forward to Nirvana's In Utero recording sessions so that he and Grohl could get back on track with being more comfortable around each other.
In the 1980s, Phil Collins earned millions of fans by churning out a string of top 40 hits, but to those who worked with him, Collins could be overly demanding and difficult. Even the biggest stars start somewhere, and for Phil Collins, that was in a band called The Real Thing. Also in the band was his future wife, Andrea Bertarelli. When Collins spoke with The Guardian in 2016, he admitted that when she left him, it kick-started the musical creativity that resulted in some of his most famous songs. Collins told the outlet, "People used to say to me, 'Don't you feel embarrassed showing your dirty laundry?' And really, I didn't, because it was the only way I knew how to write songs." Bertarelli, however, has been historically less thrilled with the arrangement. That said, things came to a head around the release of Collins' 2016 memoir, Not Dead Yet. She ultimately sued Collins over claims that were made about their relationship in the book. In an interview with the Irish Independent, Bertarelli said this about her marriage to the singer: "I have variously been portrayed as a homewrecker, a gold digger, and a bad mother. I wish to make clear I divorced Phil Collins on the grounds of his adultery. The grounds for divorce were not contested." When Peter Gabriel left Genesis, Phil Collins took over. Their relationship is at the center of one of the long-standing debates in music history, with some insisting that there was some bad blood there. There isn't. When Genesis went on their farewell tour, Gabriel was there. He told Mojo, "Phil wasn't in as great a shape as he used to be, but they did a great job. Me going was a rite of passage, really. I'd been part of the creation of Genesis, so I wanted to be there at the end." In a conversation with the Daily Mail, Gabriel also spoke a bit about Collins, telling the outlet, "He was the workaholic's workaholic." Gabriel also confirmed during the interview that the end of his time in Genesis didn't come because of any real dislike. Instead, he just sort of wanted to go his own way.
Clearly it was good for them because it sort of brought Phil out front and gave everyone a bit more space.
Chester Thompson was first recruited to join Genesis as a touring drummer in 1977 and later stayed with Collins when he went solo. It wasn't easy going though, and when Rolling Stone interviewed him in 2021, he and Collins hadn't spoken in years. Thompson said he never doubted that he was anything but Collins' backup drummer and went on to play his final show with the singer in 2010. Thompson recalled the events of that show to Rolling Stone, telling the outlet, "He got pretty frustrated with me and literally cussed me out in front of everybody. He told me that I sounded like crap and all that. The vibe just changed. It was different." Thompson added that although he'd moved on, it kicked off years of silence. When Rolling Stone spoke with Bill Bruford about his time with Genesis, he acknowledged that Phil Collins would often become irritated with his tendency to improvise while performing.
I didn't have much emotional involvement with the music. I was accustomed to being very involved in the mechanics of the music.
In Genesis, chapter and verse, Bruford recalled being told that he needed to sound just like Collins did in the studio, so it caused a bit of a rift. Still, when he spoke with Rock History Music about his brief time with the band, he had nothing but good things to say about Collins. Bruford said, "Bill is a tremendously rhythmic guy." Bruford went on to say that he was sad about the way things had shaped up for Collins.
"I'm disappointed now that he seems to be an unhappy guy. Some of that's physical, I think. I think he has a lot of physical problems."
Still, Bruford also lauded Collins for something that not all musicians can boast, and it went back to those emotionally vulnerable songs. He told Rock History Music, "I can't help but admire such an amazingly direct connection between performer and audience. I think it's fantastic." If there's anyone who's faced with a unique kind of pressure when they sat down to play alongside Phil Collins, it's Nick Collins. They are, after all, father and son. Nick was just 15 years old when he first took the stage alongside his father, and when Rolling Stone asked him what it was like, he explained, "All his drummers have looked up to different drummers, but I've looked up to him, so it helps with the songs since I'm doing the same thing."
But he's fantastic, so he's going to be my drummer, yeah.
In another Rolling Stone interview from 2022, Nick was asked what it was like to play drums at Genesis's last show ever. The then 20-year-old gave the sort of insight into Phil's life that only a son could bring. He said his father had a difficult time over the fact that he was physically unable to play the drums on stage. But as Nick also noted, the sting was lessened by the reality that it was his son taking his place. Nick told Rolling Stone, "I also do think that my dad is probably excited about the next step in his life. Music has given him so much, but he's also given so much to it. I think for him to be able to take a step back and not have that pressure that he's had for decades, I think is going to be nice for him." When Rolling Stone sat down to do a career retrospective with guitarist Daryl Stuermer, they mentioned a hilarious anecdote where he admitted to being less than impressed with Peter Gabriel after seeing him perform for the first time. But after joining a Phil Collins-led Genesis, Stuermer would become a key part of performances on stage and in the studio, both with Genesis and alongside Collins for his solo projects. However, adapting to the band's way of doing things was difficult, primarily because Collins demanded that things sound the same on stage as they did in the studio. Stuermer was never officially a member of Genesis, but he doesn't seem to have any bitter feelings about that. He told Rolling Stone, "My favorite line that Phil said about me in an interview was, 'Daryl is a permanent, part-time, temporary member.' I love that. I've actually used that line myself at times." However, Stuermer has had nothing but good things to say about working with Collins. When he was asked about all the times Collins retired only to come back for one more tour, Stuermer said it never bothered him. He told Rolling Stone, "I'm savoring it every time that we play." There's no shortage of horror stories about bands breaking up in high-profile ways, but that wasn't the case with Genesis. Even though Phil Collins launched his solo career and Mike Rutherford did his thing with Mike and the Mechanics, Rutherford still had a lot of fun just hanging out with Collins in 2017. That's when his group was opening for Collins. Rutherford told Ultimate Classic Rock, "The focus is on him doing his thing, but you never know. We'll see. It's certainly great to see Phil out doing stuff. I think it's going to be very good for him. He's too strong of a talent to not be doing something in the world. I just know I'm going to have good fun hanging out with him."
Is that you're such a legend?
No, I know. I just wanted to hear it again.
In a 2021 conversation with Rock and Roll Garage, longtime Genesis guitarist Steve Hackett shared his interesting perspective on the band's evolution. In the interview, he described the transition between Peter Gabriel and Phil Collins. Gabriel, he said, was a David Bowie-esque actor. performing for an audience in a very visual way. Collins, however, was very different. Hackett told the outlet, "He was very, very good. I think to be able to hold the audience in the palm of his hand, it was something that Phil had because he had the common touch." When Hackett sat down for a chat with Ultimate Classic Rock, he was asked about something that Collins alleged in his memoir. Collins wrote that the guitarist hadn't been straightforward with him when he was getting ready to leave the band. Hackett admitted to this, telling the outlet, "I loved Phil and I didn't want him to talk me out of it because I suspect that he and I would have continued working on for many years to come." John Bonham's 1980 death saw Led Zeppelin going on hiatus, and it wasn't until 1985 that they returned to the stage to perform a 20-minute set for Live Aid. It was an honorable enough return, but it didn't exactly go over well with the public. As Far Out explains, they needed a drummer and chose Phil Collins, but it wasn't that easy of a transition for him. Collins had never even rehearsed with the band, but in a short amount of time, he found himself playing a London show, then hopping on a jet, traveling across the Atlantic, and joining them for their Philadelphia show the same day. If it sounds absolutely grueling, it was, and Collins would later say that he didn't even know he was going to be performing with Led Zeppelin that night. His prep consisted of listening to Stairway to Heaven on the flight, and what Page has said about him in the aftermath hasn't been kind. At the time, he condemned Collins to MTV. Page didn't even mention him by name when he said, "One drummer was halfway across the Atlantic and didn't know the stuff.
I just came here to play the drums and I had a good time."
When Tony Banks, one of the founding members of Genesis, sat down with Vulture in 2023, he said there were a few things he wished Phil Collins had done differently. Specifically, In the Air Tonight. That was, of course, a massive hit for Collins, and according to Banks, Collins always claimed that he'd originally played it and pitched it as a Genesis song. However, Banks said that wasn't the case, revealing to Vulture, "If Genesis had done it, I'd have probably screwed it up. That's one of my favorite songs of his, and always has been."
To me, it's about the song.
He also confirmed that yes, fans had definitely seen the end of Genesis, but it wasn't arguments or conflict that had put an end to the whole thing. Banks told Vulture, "I don't think there's anything else left. The well is dry. We can't tour anymore because of Phil's state, so that's the end of that." By the time Marilyn Martin joined Phil Collins for the hit Separate Lives, she'd already been featured on albums with acts like Joe Walsh and Stevie Nicks. In 2013, she was interviewed for the blog Kicking It Old School and said that she had nothing but fond memories of the song. Martin told the outlet, "Phil is perfection. I was around him for a long period of time when we filmed the video, and he was very kind and extremely focused. When I began work on my album, he sent me a cassette of some songs that he thought I might like to record. So thoughtful." In 2017, Leland Sklar was interviewed by the German Genesis fan club, and by that time, he had already been touring and performing with Collins for about 3 decades. It hadn't always been easy, though, and he acknowledged the fact that there were about 10 years that he had little to no contact with Collins. However, there was no falling out. In fact, once Collins came out with his 2016 memoir, Sklar realized what his friend had been struggling with. He told the outlet, "It used to be with Phil, like if you sent him an email, you would get a response within a few minutes. And now, you could send him emails and you might not get a response for 6 months. So he became very private and introverted." Sklar then added that although his level of contact with Collins was infrequent during this period, he still made it a point to reach out to him. Sklar told the outlet, "I was writing to him on a pretty regular basis, just saying that I don't care if we ever play music again. I just care about you as a friend. And I hope you're okay."
From Mike Broden's drumming to Robert Trujillo's dance moves, there's no doubt the Prince of Darkness Ozzy Osbourne leaves an undeniable impression on all those who grace the stage with him. Guitarist Zakk Wylde's name has pretty much become synonymous with Ozzy Osbourne. In between his gig with Osbourne's solo band, he's also built up a reputation for himself as a leader of his own heavy metal group, Black Label Society. He's clearly much more than a hired gun, but he nevertheless has a special place in his heart for the man who helped take him to the next level. And having spent so much time with Osbourne, he also has a different perspective on him compared to most people. During a 2021 interview with Access TV, Wylde suggested that the metal legend could have had another successful career if he decided music wasn't for him anymore. As he noted, he's always taking the out of himself and or whatever else is going on in the world. If he wasn't this legendary frontman and singer and everything like that, he'd have to do stand-up.
it's a miracle any work ever gets done, just because we're constantly, all you gotta do is hang out with him for like 5 minutes, you'll be on the floor crying.
Rob Blasco Nicholson has been slapping the bass for Ozzy Osbourne's solo band since 2003, and he's also performed with the likes of Rob Zombie and Danzig. He's also maintained another successful career as a manager for such bands as Black Veil Brides and In This Moment. Despite all his other success, he's still appreciative of the opportunity to play with Osbourne, who's the undisputed star of the show. In a 2010 interview with Uber Rock, he declared, "Ozzy Osbourne is like the Frank Sinatra of metal." That's because, as Nicholson sees it, he's able to pick and choose who he shares the stage with. At the same time, his songs transcend any particular lineups, as they're seminal pieces of music history, and it doesn't matter who's on stage when they're being performed. In Nicholson's case, however, he's had a solid gig playing with Osbourne for 2 decades, so the job security has been nice. The core Black Sabbath members of Ozzy Osbourne, Tony Iommi, Geezer Butler, and Bill Ward were destined to change the face of heavy metal together. While reflecting on the band's legacy with Music Radar in 2019, Butler discussed his recruitment of Osbourne for his earlier band, Rare Breed. As he put it, "My first impression of Ozzy was that he was not the full shilling, as we used to say back then. I'd seen his Ozzy Zig Needs Gig advert in the local musical instrument store and noticed he lived a few streets away from me in Aston. I went around to his house, but he wasn't in. Osbourne eventually came to Butler's house, and he was quite the sight. As Butler recalled, I opened the door and there was this skinhead with a factory gown on, no shoes or socks, a chimney brush over his shoulder, and a sneaker on a dog lead. Somehow, this eccentric package was the ideal frontman for the band."
Geezer said Ozzy would have died if Black Sabbath stayed together.
Absolutely.
Greek guitar god Gus G shredded his way into Ozzy Osbourne's radar thanks to his impressive work in his own band, Firewind. Despite his burgeoning reputation as one of the best players around, even he felt the jitters when he encountered the iconic metal god for the first time in 2009. During a 2020 appearance on the That Metal Interview podcast, he revealed that he received an email inviting him to audition for the band from someone at Sharon Osbourne's office. So he headed off to Los Angeles to strut his stuff, where the enormity of what he was doing caught up with him during the audition. Fortunately though, Osbourne himself managed to calm him down. As Gus recalled, he was like, "Hey man, take it easy. Let's just jam and don't worry if you play a few notes wrong. It's rock and roll, that's what happens. Just play with all your heart. Let's do it." He was just a very nice and very sweet guy, very warm-hearted. He broke the ice right away. Once they started playing, they got caught up in the music, and all the anxiety washed away. Randy Rhoads tragically passed away at the age of 25 from a plane crash in 1982, just as his star was beginning to rise. But he still managed to leave his mark as the creator of some of the most iconic riffs in rock history, particularly the one for the band's hit song from 1980, Crazy Train. He inspired a generation of guitarists to follow in his wake, as his speedy, technical style shaped the future of heavy metal. As revealed by the documentary Randy Rhoads: Reflections of a Guitar Icon, Rhoads respected Black Sabbath, but he wasn't exactly a fan of theirs. His brother Kelly noted that Randy believed Black Sabbath's music to be too slow and grim for his own liking. Also, the guitarist couldn't quite understand why Osbourne tattooed his name on his hand, as he blurted out, "Who the f*** would write his name on his hand?" Despite Randy's misgivings, he went on to audition for Osbourne's band. He was given the job immediately, and the rest is history. Black Sabbath had its fair share of drama and turmoil, with the bandmates getting along famously and subsequently hating each other over and over again. After they embarked on their final tour in 2017, they're reportedly on much better terms with each other. Although according to guitarist Tony Iommi, they don't really keep in touch. As he explained to Far Out magazine in 2021, "We don't really speak because Ozzy Osbourne and I are useless on the phone, the pair of us. I think we stopped that when he used to phone me at 2 o'clock in the morning and I'd go, 'Oz, it's 2 o'clock in the morning.' Oh, sorry. All right, bye."
How's your health these days, Tony?
Hopefully, at the moment, it's all right. But
Good.
You know, you just don't know.
With the Osbourne family recently moving back to the United Kingdom permanently, maybe it will be easier for them to actually stay in touch and see each other. The two of them actually collaborated on a song for Osbourne's 2022 album, Patient Number 9, with Iommi telling Rolling Stone, "I like what Ozzy sang on it. I think he did a really good job." When Black Sabbath embarked on their final tour, they were missing drummer Bill Ward. He'd been absent for a few years before that, as he cited a bad contract. However, Ozzy Osbourne told Mojo magazine that the reason the band parted ways with Ward was because he struggled to remember his drum parts. Ward was unhappy about the accusations leveled against him, so in 2015, he took to Facebook to announce, "I'm looking for an honest accountability of all of Ozzy's statements that I felt were untrue. I would want Ozzy to amend his opinions and exaggerations. I would want him to be forthcoming about his unrealistic viewpoints. And because I was chastised publicly, I would want him to amend publicly in his words, and not through an Ozzy representative, the nature of the wrongs." The feud between Ward and his bandmates then went back and forth for several years. Following the final show of the Black Sabbath reunion in 2017, Ward admitted to Rolling Stone, "The biggest loss has been Oz. I loved him in a very special way. That's been the toughest one to let go, and to wish him farewell and happiness in his life and everything else."
I've never been able to play comfortably in any other Black Sabbath other than with Ozzy, Tony, and Geezer.
One of the longest-serving members of Ozzy Osbourne's solo band is keyboardist Adam Wakeman, the son of Yes keyboardist Rick Wakeman. The elder Wakeman has known Osbourne for many years, having contributed his talents to the 1973 Black Sabbath album Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. During a 2018 appearance on the podcast Talking Metal, the younger Wakeman revealed that while Osbourne has the ability to have anyone he wants in the band with him, he's fairly loyal and prefers stability to chaos. As he explained, "I think everybody knows that Ozzy is not one of those revolving door type guys. He values the people in the band. And at the same time, we're fully aware that he can have whoever he likes in the band. He can call up anybody. He's Ozzy Osbourne. We're all grateful to be here." Wakeman added that Osbourne never misses a beat to tell him older stories about his father and their time together. Drummer Tommy Clufetis has stepped in as a touring member and session musician for Black Sabbath in the past, and he's also been the main man to hit the skins for Osbourne's solo band. He's a huge fan of his frontman and believes that he's one of the greatest of all time for a specific reason. As he explained in an interview on the Memoirs of a Madman DVD, he has charisma, he's entertaining, it's in his blood. That's what separates him from so many entertainers from the past or nowadays. He has that charisma thing that great entertainers have, not just the music, they have the other thing that draws people to them. In 2021, Clufetis told the music blog Misplaced Straws that Osbourne is pretty much the greatest, and even compared his stage presence to that of Elvis Presley. As he admitted, "I'll always play with Ozzy as long as he asks me to play with him." Before becoming Metallica's bassist, Robert Trujillo had a stint in Ozzy Osbourne's solo band. He was even part of the controversial re-recordings of the albums Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman that attracted a lot of attention due to Bob Daisley's royalty dispute with Osbourne. Trujillo, though, has happy memories of his stint with the godfather of metal, including the wild times on stage that influenced one of his trademark dance moves. As he revealed to MMA Junkie, "He and I started doing this dance together that ended up becoming the crab walk. He would do all kinds of weird stuff. He'd pull your hair, scratch you, try to bite you, something weird. I was warned about this, and he would do that." Trujillo added that it was quite the surreal experience, considering that he'd been a fan of Osbourne since he was a teenager.
Now we're excited because we get to see Ozzy. This is going to be awesome.
Drummer Mike Bordin has not only performed with a once-in-a-generation talent in the form of Faith No More vocalist Mike Patton, but has also laid down the beats for arguably the greatest figure in heavy metal history, Ozzy Osbourne. Alongside Osbourne, Bordin has had the opportunity to rock stages around the world and perform for massive audiences, up to and including the Queen of England. In a 2004 interview with Modern Drummer, Bordin revealed that he believes he's the biggest Black Sabbath fan and wanted to play the drum beats the way they'd been originally recorded. But he was surprised by Osbourne's attitude towards the music and how he wasn't stuck in the past. As Bordin recalled, "The thing that I thought was really interesting going in was learning the classic tunes and then finding out that Ozzy's approach to them had changed. I remember him saying, 'Well, we don't do it like that anymore. We do it like this.' I realized that over the years of working with different drummers, those tunes, and Ozzy, had evolved." Bordin also made sure to note, "His personality is so huge. He's larger than life. It's an awesome thing to be part of that and feel that." Bassist Bob Daisley played a pivotal role in shaping the sound of Ozzy Osbourne's solo band in the years after he departed Black Sabbath. Daisley wasn't too fazed by joining a group with such a renowned superstar, since he'd already played with the likes of Richie Blackmore and made a name for himself in the rock scene. As he noted during a 2021 interview with Rolling Stone, he and Osbourne hit it off immediately, and the former Black Sabbath frontman even listened to his advice to get rid of two band members who weren't quite up to scratch. As Daisley explained, "I loved him as a guy. We got on really well straight away. I said, 'To be honest with you, are you set on these other two guys?' He said, 'Why?' I said, 'They're all right, they're good, but there's no spark there. There's nothing special about the situation.'" Daisley then added that Osbourne walked out of the kitchen straight into the room where the other two musicians were playing and told them to pack their bags and go.
From failing to jive with the king of pop to forming a love quadrangle with Carly Simon, here's what Mick Jagger's collaborators and bandmates have spilled about the iconic rock star over the years. Mick Jagger and Keith Richards' partnership has been the source of some of the greatest rock music of all time, but they've also had plenty of arguments over the decades, and the Rolling Stones' lead guitarist has been very open about them. He once told Men's Journal, "I've always found working with Mick is like a joy. It's a real pleasure. It's outside of the realm of work is where we tend to disagree." Richards has also criticized Jagger on several occasions, specifically for being self-absorbed, for altering his personality for the sake of popularity, and maybe worst of all, for diverting attention from the Stones with his solo career. In his autobiography, Life, Richards wrote, "What somebody else was doing was far more interesting to him than what he was doing. He even began to act as if he wanted to be someone else. Why would you want to be anything else if you're Mick Jagger?" The two have spent so much time together that eventually their tensions led them into having an almost strictly professional relationship. In a 2013 interview with Rolling Stone, Richards mused, "I haven't gone to his dressing room in, I don't think, 20 years. Sometimes I miss my friend."
The whole bloody thing.
Yes, the whole thing. In a 1997 interview with the German magazine Focus, Rolling Stones guitarist Ronnie Wood explained, "People often get the wrong impression of Mick. The clever businessman is just one side of Mick. The other side is the same as the rest of us, a true rocker." When dining with Mick the other night, he discussed each song of our new album with the enthusiasm of a 20-year-old guy. More recently, Wood pointed out how impressed he's been with his bandmates' health, even as he nears his 80th birthday. In 2019, Jagger underwent heart surgery, a procedure that barely seemed to faze him. Afterward, Wood told The Sun, "He's just so fit. He sets aside 3 hours a day to exercise, and that's done him plenty of favors in later life. He's superhuman, really." Besides Keith Richards, the Rolling Stone who shared the stage with Mick Jagger the most was the late drummer Charlie Watts. Before his passing in 2021, he often expressed his fascination with the relationship between his bandmates. In the book The Rolling Stones, A Life on the Road, he explained, "There's a magic about them that people like. They always argue, but they always love each other. They know each other so well."
Mick is just the best front man in the world. I mean that in the nicest possible way.
Watts also described a key difference between Jagger and Richards by noting, "They're two totally different people. One is meticulous and detailed, and the other is a complete bohemian. But they both have a direction for themselves, and they can both see whatever it is." But Watts has also made some less than positive observations, as he once noted, "You'd imagine Mick would be the happiest guy in the world, and yet a lot of the time he isn't." Bassist Bill Wyman was a crucial element in the Rolling Stones sound for decades, but in the years since his departure in 1992, he's revealed why he doesn't regret his decision to leave. In an interview with Classic Rock magazine, he explained, "Instead of being nice and saying, 'Great 30 years, cheers mate,' Mick would say the most absurd, stupid things. With that spoilt attitude he had, he'd say things like, 'Oh well, if anybody has to play bass, I'll do it. It can't be that hard.'" Wyman was also critical of how Jagger could pretend to be someone he wasn't, as he added, "Mick and Keith weren't Londoners, though Mick always tries on his Cockney accent, which he doesn't deserve, really."
How much longer are you going to be with the Rolling Stones? How much longer are they going to be around? Are you tired of it yet?
About 20 minutes, I think.
20 more minutes and that's it?
Former Rolling Stones guitarist Mick Taylor has also had a rocky relationship with Jagger over the years. As he admitted to Mojo magazine in 1997, "We used to fight and argue all the time, and one of the things I got angry about was that Mick had promised to give me some credit for some of the songs, and he didn't. I believed I'd contributed enough. Let's put it this way, without any contribution, those songs would not have existed." On the TV special On the Road with Mick Taylor, the guitarist pointed out how his personality was perceived differently just because he shared the stage with the famous frontman. Many fans had assumed Taylor was quiet and reserved, but that wasn't the case, as he clarified. Anybody that's on the same stage with Mick Jagger is going to look a little bit shy. David Bowie and Mick Jagger were friends and collaborators for a long time, before the former's passing in 2016. Perhaps most notably, they performed a cover version of Dancing in the Street together for Live Aid in 1985. But Jagger learned the hard way that he had to be careful around Bowie when it came to their creative teamwork. The late singer-songwriter admitted that he would take ideas he liked and give them his own personal twist, and he even labeled himself a tasteful thief. Jagger wasn't exactly happy with that, with Bowie explaining to Playboy in 1976, "Mick Jagger is scared to walk into the same room as me, even thinking any new idea. He knows I'll snatch it." One of the first times that happened was when Jagger showed Bowie some artwork by Belgian artist G. Polaire. that was intended for the cover of a Rolling Stones album. But before that album was released, Bowie hired Polaire to design the cover of his 1974 LP Diamond Dogs. As Bowie quipped about the incident, "Mick was silly. I mean, he should never have shown me anything new. Mick's learned now. As I've said, he will never do that again." The Who guitarist Pete Townshend has had the pleasure of working with Jagger several times since the 1960s. Two of their most significant collaborations were Townshend's appearances on a couple of Jagger's solo albums, 1985's She's the Boss and 2001's Goddess in the Doorway. But it turns out that Townshend was open to more than just collaborating musically, as he admitted in his 2013 book, Who I Am, a memoir. Although Mick was a friend, I was concerned by the thought that our co-manager, Kit Lambert, might be collaborating with our most serious competition. I was also suspicious he was having a sexual dalliance with Mick and felt a little jealous. Mick is the only man I've ever seriously wanted to f***. For years, guitarist Jeff Beck aspired to perform with the Rolling Stones, so he was quite happy when he got the chance to work with Jagger on his debut solo album, She's the Boss. He thoroughly enjoyed the experience, and then worked on Jagger's follow-up, 1987's Primitive Cool. But before they collaborated, they were actually already connected to each other in a weird way. As Beck revealed to Classic Rock magazine in 2021, "I used to get mistaken for him all the time in '61. I used to have girls screaming at me, and I didn't know what the f*** they were screaming about. I'd pull up along somebody in a car and they'd go, 'Mick,' and I'd be thinking, 'Who the f*** is this Mick?' Then I realized it was this guy in the Rolling Stones called Mick Jagger." As Tina Turner tells it, she helped Mick Jagger perfect one of his signature skills. As she revealed to the Daily Mail in 2017, "Mick wanted to dance, and I was a dancer, but he never gave me the credit. He said his mother taught him how to dance. But we worked with him in the dressing room. Me and the girls, we taught him how to pony." Turner and Jagger famously performed 2 songs together at Live Aid in 1985. They also shared a controversial moment on stage, as he ripped her skirt off. He was criticized for the risque act, but it didn't seem to affect their friendship, nor was it a sign of a more intimate relationship, as Turner assured the Daily Mail. "We never slept together, and they never came on to me because I think they saw me as a role model in some kind of way."
There's a communication there that you can't touch.
When Carly Simon recorded her iconic song You're So Vain, with Mick Jagger providing backup vocals, it wasn't clear if the song was about her fiancé James Taylor, or actor Warren Beatty, or Jagger himself. Regardless of who the lyrics were about, Simon has admitted that there was a lot of sexual tension between her and Jagger while they worked together. In her memoir, Boys in the Trees, she mused, "If Mick could have his way, it would be Romeo and Juliet tragic. We couldn't have each other." The chemistry was strong enough that Jagger's new wife, Bianca, was convinced he was cheating on her, though Simon and Jagger reportedly never acted upon their mutual attraction. But Bianca was upset enough that she called Taylor the night before his wedding to Simon, though Taylor assured her that it wasn't what she thought and that he trusted his fiancée. Lenny Kravitz worked with Jagger on the latter's 2001 album, Goddess in the Doorway. During a 2014 appearance on The Howard Stern Show, Kravitz revealed, "I love him. We're good friends. We've worked together. But when you're in that moment and he's in the studio and you press record, I just sit there and go, my God, it sounds like Mick Jagger."
It's Mick Jagger just coming out of Mick Jagger, and it's pretty incredible.
Kravitz was working at his home studio in Miami on the music for God Gave Me Everything, a track on that album. Jagger then arrived to help write the lyrics. Kravitz was most impressed by the fact that after Jagger heard the music he produced, he left the room and returned with the lyrics just 45 minutes later. Mick Jagger's work with top talent in the music industry isn't all business, including his regular partnerships with Dave Stewart, formerly of the pop duo Eurythmics. As Stewart once revealed to Cinema.com, "There was a time a while back when I moved to Paris, and Mick and I became friends in Paris. We were always down the studio messing about, and we would just write songs for fun. And we've been writing songs for fun ever since, really in various places." Jagger and Stewart have teamed up for several projects over the years, such as composing the soundtrack for the 2004 film Alfie. But more significantly, in 2011, they formed the band Super Heavy, along with Josh Stone, Damian Marley, and others. The goal was to experiment and create something truly unique by fusing genres ranging from reggae to the sounds of the Indian subcontinent. The album Goddess in the Doorway included Jagger's collaboration with U2 frontman Bono and guitarist Pete Townshend on the song Joy. Afterward, Bono had nothing but kind words for Jagger. He complimented his impressive looks for a man in his 70s, as well as his business skills. As he told a German newspaper, "People despise Mick because they think he only thinks about money, but he is a businessman above all else. The fact is, he understands the business. Why? Because the Stones lost a lot of money in the beginning. I have to kneel in reverence to what he has achieved. What I like about him as a person is that he always speaks his mind openly, and he never talks much about himself. He's not a narcissistic person." After Michael Jackson wrote the song State of Shock, he reached out to Mick Jagger for what he thought could be the perfect partnership for recording the duet. Jagger was a little hesitant, but the King of Pop was ultimately able to talk him into it. It helped that the Stones' frontman was already looking to branch out on his own, so State of Shock was released in 1984. The song turned out to be a hit, reaching number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100. Despite that success, the experience wasn't a happy one for either artist. As journalist Christopher Anderson wrote in his book Mick, The Wildlife and Mad Genius of Jagger, Jackson reportedly asked about Jagger. How did he ever get to be a star? Likewise, Jagger thought little of the King of Pop, calling him, quote, very lightweight, like froth on a beer.
Rock star, artist, legend. David Bowie was one of the most influential people in the music industry, but how did he come across to those who performed alongside him? Both classic rock icons who dominated music in the 1970s, David Bowie and Mick Jagger of the Rolling Stones collaborated on a song just once. In 1985, they recorded a one-off cover version of Martha and the Vandellas' 1964 hit Dancing in the Street. The Bowie and Jagger version reached number 1 in their native UK and the top 10 in the US. The two were friends for many years, both before and after they released the track.
We used to go out in New York a lot, we used to go out dancing all the time.
According to Bowie's first wife, Angela, they were also discreet lovers at one point. After Bowie's death in 2016, Jagger talked up their close friendship to Rolling Stone, saying, "There was always an exchange of information within our friendship, and I suppose there was always an element of competition between us, but it never felt overwhelming." Jagger added that they most often discussed work concerns unique to rock stars, such as hiring band members, songwriting methods, and flashy fashion. Jagger recalled, "He'd always look at my clothes labels. When he would see me, he'd give me a hug, and I could feel him going up behind the collar of my shirt to see what I was wearing. He used to copy me sometimes, but he'd be very honest about it." Jagger clarified he'd also borrow Bowie's looks from time to time, and that he was always happy to share with his old friend. Jazz musician Mike Garson joined the David Bowie universe early into his career, successfully auditioning to play keyboards in Bowie's live band, even though he wasn't familiar with Bowie's music. With 600 shows logged between 1972 and 2006, nobody played alongside Bowie more than Garson did, and his multi-instrumental work is all over Bowie albums like Aladdin Sane, Pinups, Diamond Dogs, Young Americans, Black Tie White Noise, and Earthling.
That was Mike Garson on piano, of course.
Due to his years of involvement, Garson witnessed Bowie's rise to stardom and every era that followed, and the keyboardist knew from the beginning that the songwriter was an icon in the making. Garson told Classic Rock, "He was beautifully sculpted. His face, the makeup, the clothing. You knew you were in the presence of a star. The only other person I'd seen like that was Elvis Presley." Garson went on to say that Bowie was very open to his creative input and that the singer considered Garson more of a collaborator than a hired gun. Speaking with Quartz, he marveled at Bowie's work and leadership styles. He even compared Bowie's creative direction to that of Miles Davis, in that neither tried to nitpick his band's playing. He said, he knew who to pick to work with, and he knew if he got out of the way and let them do their thing, he'd get the most out of them. After fronting the proto-punk band The Stooges, Iggy Pop launched a solo career with his two 1977 albums, The Idiot and Lust for Life. Bowie had been Pop's friend and mentor since 1971 and was heavily involved in his protégé's second act. He produced both records and contributed to the songwriting of each project, and he helped assemble a backing band for the burgeoning rocker.
Had he not come along with that proposal, I probably wouldn't be talking to you now.
Really? On the second LP, Bowie also played piano. Pop was deeply appreciative of his friend's help, recalling to the New York Times, "He was more of a benefactor than a friend in a way most people think of friendship. He went a bit out of his way to bestow some good karma on me." Pop went on to talk about how Bowie showed genuine interest in his family in Michigan, and that he even went to visit his parents' trailer. Upon Bowie's death in 2016, Pop memorialized the musician on X, formerly known as Twitter, writing, "David's friendship was the light of my life. I never met such a brilliant person. He was the best there is." Thomas Dolby's synth-powered 1982 song She Blinded Me with Science was his only major hit in the US. However, he was also an electronic music pioneer with an extensive resume as a session musician, and it was in that capacity that he joined David Bowie's band as a keyboardist for the singer's 1985 Live Aid performance. Speaking with Ultimate Classic Rock, Dolby revealed Bowie wasn't completely aware that the outdoor music festival was staged to raise money to fight famine in Africa, so he initially planned to use it as a chance to promote his newest single. Dolby explained, "Then he got closer and he zeroed in on that and he realized it wasn't about that. He was going to rise above that and do something transcendent, and so he kept changing the choice of songs right up until the last minute."
After 3 rehearsals, and there's not much you can do. The main requirement was anything with no more than 3 chords.
That rushed atmosphere nevertheless gave Dolby a strong impression of how Bowie made art. Much like Garson, Dolby commended Bowie for the freedom and inspiration he gave his players, saying, "He'd never grab a guitar from you and show you a chord or plunk out a melody on the keyboard. He would just stand in the middle of the room exuding light, and we all wanted to shine for him. It's a very inspiring experience." Songwriter, arranger, guitarist, and producer Mick Ronson may be responsible for creating the idea of David Bowie more than anyone else besides Bowie himself. Ronson played on Bowie's breakout single, the 1969 sci-fi folk hybrid Space Oddity, and he stuck around through Bowie's early years of stardom and experimentation. In the early 1970s, Ronson arranged songs on Bowie's album Hunky Dory, and he performed as one member of the titular intergalactic backing band for Bowie's concept album, The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. However, Bowie ultimately fired Ronson in the 1970s. The relationship between the two musicians declined at one point, and Ronson explained when and how it happened in an interview with reporter Gary Mulholland. He recalled, "I remember the Ziggy tour. He was so happy then. He loved it and we were all having the time of our lives, and it got knocked on the head. It was such a f***ing shame. America affected the band so badly." In the wake of the conflict, Ronson went on to explain that he planned to visit Bowie in the States with the intention to, quote, "kick some sense into him." Evidently, their relationship improved at some point over the years, for after a hiatus of more than 15 years, Ronson returned to work on the 1993 LP Black Tie, White Noise. Sadly, the guitarist died shortly thereafter from cancer. David Jones knew Jeff McCormack for most of his life, as the two met at school when they were 8 years old. Impressively, both went on to become professional rock musicians under the stage names David Bowie and War and Peace, respectively. In the 1970s, McCormack acted as a backup singer on 5 Bowie LPs, including Aladdin Sane and Station to Station, and he was part of the traveling ensemble in the 1974 tour in support of Diamond Dogs. On that same album, he also co-wrote the track Rock and Roll With Me. In 2023, McCormack looked back on a lifetime of memories to reflect on the big picture meaning and impact of Bowie. Discussing the legacy Bowie built, McCormack reflected to Ultimate Classic Rock, "I think he's pretty well cemented himself a place in music history. Because there's something, even if you're not a fan of everything he did, there's something admirable about the way he got through that and reinvented himself so many times and kept you guessing that other artists just don't have." McCormack also pointed out that Bowie's ability to genre hop will also be a big part of why he'll go down in history. He explained, "You think of a band or an artist, you kind of think of that genre, whereas it's difficult to stick that on him and go, which genre? When he did that? Or when he did that?" So it's that force of a body of work rather than a style. Bassist and occasional trumpet player Trevor Bolder first played on a David Bowie project for 1971's Hunky Dory. He'd become a member of Bowie's Ziggy Stardust era band, playing live and contributing to Aladdin Sane, Pinups, and the Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. When Bowie moved on from his alien persona and that band, Bolder continued his musical career playing in the popular British hard rock outfit Uriah Heep. As a first-hand witness to Bowie's rise into the realm of superstardom, Bolder harbored complicated and largely negative feelings about his former boss. Speaking with Dimitri M. Epstein in 2003, Bolder recalled how their relationship changed as Bowie's star grew, saying, "He was a nice, caring bloke, but the bigger he got, the bigger his head got, and the less important you were to him. When he didn't need you, he'd discard you, but while he needed you, he was very friendly towards you. Sadly, Boulder died in 2013, just a few years before his ex-band leader. After many distinct eras as a solo artist with various groups of hired backing musicians, David Bowie set out to form a true rock band in the 1980s. That idea became the two-album project Tin Machine, and drummer Hunt Sales was among the players Bowie recruited for the project. Long associated with Todd Rundgren, Sales previously backed up Iggy Pop in the late 1970s in the same band Bowie played keyboards with. Sales seemingly didn't feel much, if any, intimidation around Bowie, always viewing him as a bandmate and compatriot. He explained to Billboard in 2018, "Tin Machine was a band. I didn't work for him. I worked with him. I could say, 'You know what I like about that idea, Dave?' He'd say, 'What?' And I'd go, 'Nothing.' And he'd laugh because at least I was shooting from the hip and being honest with him." After over a decade in the limelight, it seems that Bowie came to appreciate some candor from his collaborators in favor of the blind placating that often comes with celebrity. In 1995, David Bowie toured to promote his album Outside, bringing along Trent Reznor's project 9 Inch Nails for the run of shows. Bowie and Reznor often performed together on stage and in the studio, and Reznor produced multiple Bowie remixes, including 5 new takes on I'm Afraid of Americans.
There's kind of one pivotal point where we both seem to have the same sensibility, and we sort of boiled down the choices of songs that we've done really represent the 2 points.
Being asked to play with Bowie was monumental for Reznor, who once saw the musician as an idol and later as a guide and fatherly presence. Discussing the experience with Rolling Stone, Reznor gushed, "To actually meet this man in the flesh and find out, to my delight, that he passed any expectation I had. The fact that he was this graceful, charming, happy, fearless character became a new point of inspiration for me." Reznor went on to describe the experience of performing his song Hurt with Bowie as one of the most incredible experiences of his life. Even more profoundly, Reznor also credits Bowie for helping him beat an addiction to drugs. Reznor recalled that at the time he met Bowie, the rock star had been through a lot and made it out the other end. He explained, "He said some things that weren't scolding, but pieces of wisdom that stuck with me. You know, there is a better way here, and it doesn't have to end in despair or in death." Alongside Hunt Sales, Reeves Gabrels was another piece to Bowie's experimental rock project Tin Machine. Sticking with Bowie through 2 Tin Machine albums and many of his solo projects throughout the 1990s and beyond, Gabrels served as Bowie's lead guitarist longer than anyone else. Their relationship evolved over time, but Gabrels frequently acted as Bowie's confidant when discussing the less than attractive elements of being a celebrity and public-facing artist. As he put it to Premier Guitar, in the early stages of their collaboration, he saw the singer as something of an older brother. Gabrels also added that, while they were preparing to release Tin Machine's work, his frontman was very upfront about the reality of playing in a band with a rock legend. He recalled Bowie telling him, "It's great when we're behind these walls, but as soon as we get out in the world and start dealing with the paparazzi side of press and things like that, it's gonna get weird. It's like, basically, we're all equals in here, but as soon as we get outside, it's gonna be all about me." Gabrels also said that Bowie bluntly lamented that all fame could really get him were luxuries like nice tables at restaurants and free entry to concerts. Apparently, even some of the biggest stars of their age still feel the constraints of the public eye in their day-to-day life. Gail Ann Dorsey is a solo artist and prolific session musician who has played with alternative rock bands like Tears for Fears, Indigo Girls, and Gang of Four. In 1995, her resume grew even more impressive when David Bowie personally called her to offer her a spot in his band. Dorsey accepted the gig, and she remained a member of Bowie's live ensemble until 2002, in addition to playing on the album Earthling. In a piece she wrote for The Guardian memorializing the singer, she reflected, "For someone who had allegedly done so many drugs, the wealth of intellect he possessed and exuded was astonishing. He used to tell me he was thankful I didn't know him when he was on drugs, that I wouldn't have liked him very much." Dorsey went on to highlight Bowie's generosity and kind heart and seemed extremely appreciative for the impact he had on her own musical journey. She recalled that, in addition to getting to play in his band, he would come to support her other artistic pursuits as well, writing, "At times when the stage was mine alone, he would venture out to watch me perform a solo acoustic set at some Manhattan singer-songwriter cave on a weeknight, lurking there in the shadows, cheering me on."
Carlos Santana has persistently given off vibes that he's all about 2 things, music and spirituality. But is the man behind the music the same one we see on stage? Here's what his bandmates have said. At the 2000 Grammys, Santana's collaborative album Supernatural won 9 trophies. Among those wins was a Grammy for Best Group Rock Performance for Put Your Lights On, composed by the song's vocalist Eric Schrody, aka Everlast, a rapper who became a singer-songwriter after House of Pain disbanded. Despite Supernatural winning so many awards and eventually selling more than 30 million copies, Everlast doesn't think the success spoiled or even changed Carlos Santana in any meaningful way. Just after the Grammys that year, he told the Hartford Courant, "His vibe is the same no matter what. He's just the most gracious, spiritual dude you'd ever meet. He's happy, but I don't think this is affecting his energy." Santana enjoyed the biggest individual success of his career in 1999 with the hit Smooth, a smash hit across multiple radio formats that spent 12 weeks at #1 on the Billboard Pop chart. Smooth was the lead-off single from Santana's comeback album Supernatural and featured Matchbox 20's Rob Thomas on vocals. The Thomas-Santana team-up was short-lived by design, but working alongside Santana for only a little while left Thomas with a new approach to music. He told Rolling Stone that the record was put together just so, through sound, it could change people's molecular structure, and he sat me down and explained to me that, as a musician, it's what we do. You can play one note and change the way people feel.
He taught me, when I first met him, that there's a big difference between being a famous musician and being a celebrity.
Talking about collaborating and being in the studio with Santana, Thomas added, "I don't know any other way of saying it, but I always just felt a little bit better after being with Carlos." Regarded as one of the best living conga players in the world, Puerto Rican-born Pahali Mejimas formed his Pahali Mejimas Latin Jazz Quintet in 2005. He paused work on that project in 2013 when he was asked to play the conga and various percussion in the touring version of Santana, replacing a succession of musicians that Santana didn't feel were quite right for the job. Vibing with the boss and all the other musicians on stage is extremely important in Santana, and to Carlos Santana himself. Mejias told Bienvenidos in 2018, "This is a big organization led by a megastar, and it requires certain energy, a positive attitude on stage, and they found this in me. Carlos says that he sees the light in me. Those are his words, not mine. He told me that he sees in me. The idea is that this energy projects itself on the stage to the audience." Timbales are freestanding two-headed drums traditionally played in Latin American musical styles. Nicaraguan musician Jose Chapito Arias is one of the most accomplished timbale players in the world, and in the late 1960s he left the popular San Francisco Latin rock band The Aliens to join the Santana Blues Band at the behest of its creator. He was still a part of the group, then renamed Santana, when it played Woodstock and recorded its first self-titled album. After that incarnation of Santana began to splinter in the 1970s, Arias continued working with Santana. However, when that initial lineup reunited in 2016, Arias wasn't asked to participate. In a 2017 interview, Arias hinted that Santana might be holding a grudge against him, though he didn't specify what it was about. He explained, "It's been hard trying to get close to Carlos throughout the years, even in the early days. I feel he's been somewhat distant even though he's been there. We've had a love-hate relationship." Santana is one of the few bands named after a frontman in which that frontman doesn't usually sing. The group requires a vocalist, and in 2016, Ray Green was tapped to be one of 2 alternating lead singers for the band on tour, a job that began immediately and ended his previous run as the vocalist for Tower of Power. Within weeks, Green was bewitched by Carlos Santana and caught a glimpse into how the guitarist approaches his art. Green told Berkeley Today, 5 months after he joined the band, "Santana sees music way differently than a lot of people do, which is cool. He's never settling, he's always trying different things. As long as you can be on the same wavelength with him, it can be a really cool experience. You get the sense that all he wants to do is play. He just loves playing the guitar." On all the early Santana hits that established the band's sound and reputation in the late 1960s, Carlos Santana's guitar meshed with the vocals of Greg Raleigh. An original member of Santana, Raleigh left the band to form Journey in the 1970s. But despite leaving the group, Raleigh has had nothing but good things to say about his time in the band and the man himself. In 2016, 4 decades after his initial departure from Santana's group, Raleigh returned as part of the original lineup. That year, he told the Hudson Union Society, "Carlos plays from his heart, period. And if it doesn't have that, it won't have anything for you. You can see him when he plays. If we give that to him, he gives it to us. If we all have that, we give it to you."
He's not playing with his head, he's playing with his heart.
When Greg Raleigh left Santana, his absence created an opening for a singer to share the front of the stage. Greg Walker of the pop group A Taste of Honey stepped in to fill that void. In 1975, he made the move and sang on albums like Inner Secrets and Moonflower. From his decade or so with the group, Walker finally remembers Carlos Santana's leadership skills and how he would routinely and naturally take great pains to make his musicians feel comfortable, welcome, and valued. Walker told Museum of Making Music, "If he thought that you were under, maybe a little shy, he'd do something. He'd start telling jokes or something to make you come out of whatever you was in."
That's Carlos Santana, man. He just try to lift you up
in any way he possibly could.
After staging one of the biggest comebacks in rock history with Supernatural, Santana embarked on its biggest tour in years, the Supernatural World Tour. At that point, singer Andy Vargas was hired to provide the vocals for all the classic Santana songs on stage. Vargas went on to front Santana on around 20 different tours, and recorded occasionally with the band too. Still getting his career off the ground and forging his musical identity at the time, Vargas found a guiding force in Carlos Santana. Vargas told Sound Arts, "Carlos has been an amazing mentor to me both in music and personally. He has pushed me. Well, he has pushed all of us in the band to reach greater limits with our talent." Vargas also discussed Santana's unique musical process while talking about the song Do You Remember Me, saying, "I remember when Carlos brought this song to us in rehearsal. It was not long after it came to him in a dream." An acclaimed percussionist from Cuba sought out for his bongo and conga playing, Armando Peraza brought an authentic Latin American sound to Santana. Peraza enjoyed a particularly strong bond with Carlos, and he'd become one of the longest tenured musicians in the band, playing live and on albums from 1972 to 1990. He returned briefly in 1992 and several times into the 2000s before passing away in 2014. The artists shared a mutual respect. Santana considered Peraza a mentor and idol, and Peraza thought highly of Santana too, particularly his tendency to bring in overlooked musicians. Peraza told Conga Head in 2007 that Santana is always looking out for the underdog and fostering their talents.
Carlos Santana let you play. The better you play, the more he has you.
A go-to drummer for R&B, jazz, and rock bands, Dennis Chambers has spent time supporting bands like Parliament Funkadelic, Steely Dan, and George Duke. And from 2005 to about a decade later, he performed as the touring drummer in Santana. While aware of Carlos Santana's reputation as an exacting band leader, his lasting image of the guitarist is of an artistically voracious and driven individual, and one with whom it can be hard to keep pace. He told All About That Jazz, "Carlos listens to a lot of music, a lot of different types of music. He would hear something he liked, and it would inspire him to incorporate a sound or idea into his music. It wasn't unusual for him to bring us these changes and want to incorporate them into our shows right away." It's no big secret what Cindy Blackman thinks of Santana. After all, she married him. A solo act, jazz band leader, and session musician, Blackman found some fame when she joined Lenny Kravitz's band as a drummer in live gigs and in music videos. She held the job from 1992 until the mid-2000s. In 2010, Blackman got a call to play drums for Santana in the place of double-booked regular Dennis Chambers, and was struck by the group's vibe from the very beginning.
I was like, wow, feels really free. I mean, it was, within a certain format, but it felt like there was a nice, beautiful freedom there.
It didn't take long before their professional relationship blossomed into a romantic one built on their shared interest in spirituality and philosophy. Late in 2010, after Santana and his first wife split after 30 years, he married Blackman. In 2016, Cindy Blackman Santana joined Santana full-time. When Carlos Santana was ready to record the first album under the Santana moniker, he solidified his band's lineup and installed Michael Shreve on the drums. Shreve's persistent percussion can be heard in all the early milestone moments in the band's history. Talking with the Hudson Union Society in 2016, Shreve recalled the moment he realized that he was part of something special and unique. Shortly after joining the band and participating in a grueling rehearsal session, Shreve asked Santana to attend a movie with him. They set out on foot, but Santana abruptly stopped on the way. Shreve recalled Santana saying, "Man, what do I want to go to the movies for? I want to be the movie."
It's true. I realized this is a different cat.
Shreve remains in awe of Santana's musical aptitude and passion. He told the Jack Feinberg Show, what he was searching for, he had that same, and still does by the way, the same sort of searching for the right note and the right tone and a master of melody. He's like an encyclopedia of melodies. Supernatural was a gift that kept on giving, with Maria Maria spending 10 weeks at #1 on the Billboard Pop Chart. The song featured the vocals of David McRae and Marvin Moore, otherwise known as the hip-hop act The Product G&B. McRae and Moore weren't all that excited about the collaboration with Santana at first because they didn't know anything about the guy.
I'm from the new school, so I didn't know who Carlos Santana was, you know what I'm saying?
They met him for the first time in a recording studio to create Maria Maria and had no idea what to expect. Recalling the moment, Moore told Billboard, "He came in with magic marker drawn on his sneakers and we were thinking, he's a guy who brings in the guitars or something, and he's actually Santana. You would have thought he was somebody's grandfather coming from the bus stop." But when they started making music together, it was magical, according to Moore, who added that it, quote, was a genuine mesh, a synergy, and it just worked.